Sullivan's Island, May 31st, 1776. To His Excellency, the President, J. Rutledge. We know this day a large fleet of British vessels off Dewey's Island, about 20 miles to the northward. They displayed about 50 sail before the town. The sight of these vessels alarmed us very much. We make every preparation to receive an attack in the coming days. I am Your Excellency's most obedient servant, William Moultrie, Colonel of the 2nd Regiment.
Rumors of a major southern operation by British forces soon became a reality. A powerful squadron of Royal Navy warships and troop transports sailed from Boston in Ireland to re-establish the King's authority over his rebellious Carolina colonies. Armed with timely intelligence of this move, South Carolina's new provincial Congress prepared for an invasion. South Carolina's President, John Rutledge, had assigned the important task of fortifying the entrance to Charleston Harbor to Colonel William Moultrie, a 45-year-old planter and Charleston native. Since March, Moultrie had overseen the construction of a new fortification on Sullivan's Island. For months, the work dragged on, and many feared that the fort would not be completed before the British arrived. In early June, Royal Navy ships commanded by Commodore Sir Peter Parker arrived off the Charleston bar. The horizon was a veritable forest of masts and sails. The 270 heavy guns aboard Parker's warships outnumber the American guns on Sullivan's Island 8-1. Major General Henry Clinton commands 3,000 British soldiers riding aboard the transports. With their sights set on Charleston, the British planned to use this powerful fleet to destroy the rebel fort guarding the harbor and seize Sullivan's Island. With Parker's warships pounding the American position, Clinton's redcoats would land on the island and assault the fort's unfinished rear. For good measure, 3 of Parker's frigates were to sail around the island and attack Moultrie's vulnerable garrison. With Sullivan's Island in their possession, Britain would then dominate Charleston's harbor and thus control the fate of the richest city in the American colonies. After the British had established their camps on mosquito-infested Long Island, General Clinton discovered that Breach Inlet could not be crossed on foot, even at low tide. This intelligence failure now meant that the redcoats would be forced to attempt a far more dangerous landing in boats. Despite this setback, Commodore Parker remained confident. For how could this makeshift fort and these undisciplined rebels stand up to the might of the Royal Navy? Anticipating the British move south, the Continental Congress dispatched Major General Charles Lee to Charleston. Lee wasted little time shoring up the city's defenses, but one position that concerned him was William Moultrie's unfinished fort on Sullivan's Island. Convinced that the British would easily overpower the garrison, Lee declared the position as nothing more than a slaughter pen. Despite Lee's concerns, the Americans on Sullivan's Island did have certain advantages. The 16-foot wide walls of the fort, designed to protect the garrison from the heaviest naval guns, were constructed with palmetto logs and packed sand. The fort's offensive power came from its 31 guns, many of the heaviest trained on the main ship channel. Over 435 men from the 2nd and 4th South Carolina regiments were prepared to ward off the British at all costs. On the northern end of the island, Lieutenant Colonel William Old Danger Thompson commanded 780 men from his 3rd Regiment, state troops, North Carolina Continentals, and allied Native Americans, including 30 Catawba warriors. After days of skirmishing, Thompson's troops are well positioned to stop Clinton's redcoats from crossing Breach Inlet. While visiting with Colonel Thompson, Moultrie saw that the British ships were on the move.
On the morning of the 28th of June, I saw the men of war loose their topsails. I hurried back to the fort as fast as possible. I immediately ordered the long roll to beat and officers and men to their posts. We had scarcely manned our guns when the ships of war came sailing up.
The British utilized local Black Harbor pilots to guide their ships through the treacherous harbor. Parker's most powerful warships moved into position 400 yards from the fort. With their blue flag flying defiantly overhead, Moultrie's men lit their slow matches and prepared for the attack. With everything now ready, Parker ordered the Thunder to open the attack with its large 13-inch siege mortar. As its 200-pound shell arced toward the fort, the rest of Parker's warships unleashed their broadsides. Soon, hundreds of cannonballs struck the fort. How long could the walls hold under the relentless bombardment? At Breach Inlet, Clinton's soldiers attempted to cross over to Sullivan's Island in boats. Thompson's men took steady aim with their rifles and cannon and easily drove back the vulnerable redcoats. The thunderous cannonade from the harbor could be heard all the way in Charleston, where many residents looked on with dread, and others with hope. By midday, Parker sent 3 of his frigates, Sphinx, Actaeon, and Siren, to swing behind the fort. Navigating the tricky harbor, all 3 of the ships promptly ran onto a hidden shoal. With Clinton's force repelled at Breach Inlet, and the 3 flanking ships now stuck on a sandbar, British success now rested solely upon the main line's guns. In spite of this good fortune, Moultrie and his men were in a perilous state. Without a resupply of gunpowder, the American guns would not be able to hold back the British. Moultrie ordered his men to slow their rate of fire. 10 minutes would pass between shots, but each blast was carefully aimed, and many smashed into the Royal Navy's ships. The Experiment and Bristol both suffered heavy damage from the fort's guns. The Bristol's rigging and masts were destroyed. Parker himself was wounded in the knee and leg as one shot landed on his quarterdeck. But by the afternoon, the guns inside the fort went silent. One cannonball from the unrelenting British attack knocked down the fort's flag. With no flag in sight, many believed that the Americans were surrendering. But the flag lay upon the ground outside the fort, and one soldier, Sergeant William Jasper, cried out to Moultrie, "Colonel, don't let us fight without our flag."
Determined to rescue the flag, Sergeant Jasper jumped from one of the embrasures and brought the flag up through a heavy fire. Fixing it upon a sponge staff, he planted it upon the ramparts again. Seeing the flag once more above the fort revived the spirits of the garrison.
As dusk approached, 500 pounds of desperately needed gunpowder arrived at the fort, courtesy of President Rutledge, with a message for Moultrie to be cool and do mischief. The American guns began to fire once more. From the shore, it appeared Sullivan's Island was shrouded by a heavy storm. By nightfall, Parker's warships were in a shocking state. Despite the British having fired 10 times as many rounds, the Americans were able to inflict far more damage. The decks of the British warships were awash in blood. Most of the senior officers of the Experiment had been killed, and Parker's flagship Bristol was at risk of sinking. By 9:30 p.m., Parker pulled his ships out of harm's way. The assault had ended, unbelievably, in failure. After 10 hours of ceaseless fire, silence finally fell over Charleston Harbor. With British ships out of range, Moultrie took stock of his losses. 12 of his men had been killed and another 25 wounded. The British saw far more staggering casualties. They will report 205 killed and wounded, more than 5 times the Americans. On the very day that independence was being declared in Philadelphia, Moultrie and his brave men were greeted at the fort by the jubilant citizens of Charleston. President Rutledge brought a hogshead of rum for the men and presented Sergeant Jasper with a sword for his inspiring act of saving the flag. And when accounts of the battle reached Congress, John Hancock declared that posterity will be astonished by this most stunning victory. The Battle of Sullivan's Island, one of America's first decisive victories over both the Royal Navy and British Army, was commemorated the following June and each year thereafter, later becoming known as Carolina Day. To this day, symbols of the 1776 victory at Sullivan's Island endure. Counties and towns throughout America bear the name of Jasper. The Palmetto log fort was renamed Fort Moultrie, and the distinctive blue flag with the white crescent, later augmented by a palmetto tree, became South Carolina's state flag, a constant reminder of the courage and resilience shown by the patriots who fought for freedom on June 28, 1776.